advice that does come is often just be yourself, which is like, okay, that's not working. There was no training around making friends. That was something that I was just supposed to know how to do. No one that is right for you is going to reject you. And getting the no is actually it's a gift.
You've helped hundreds of millions of people become more confident and more charismatic, and I'm one of them. It may shock you, but I wasn't the coolest kid in high school.
Okay.
And I did really struggle with self-confidence and self-love for a really long time. And I actually stumbled on your videos earlier, and I would watch some of them, and I'd also read a lot of those self-help books about how to talk to people. There was one book where I would like always use someone's first name because I thought it was a good tip to keep them engaged. And one of the things that I really love about your channel is that you chip away at the misconception that these skills are in it and that people can actually develop them over time. And I was curious, what do you think makes so many people think they can't develop these skills?
First off, I'm super glad to hear that. I want to hear more about how it impacted you. I think no one ever says so when you're growing up. There's like a cool kid in junior high or high school, and he just is that way. Mm-hmm. And my experience was I was definitely not that way. And so the things that I was encouraged to work on were maybe a bit of athletics, maybe a bit of academics, but certainly there was no one with like no extracurricular activity or any sort of tutor or training around making friends. That was something that I was just supposed to know how to do. And yeah, it sounds like we may have had a mirrored high school experience of not knowing what to do, say, where to put my hands, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, but I'm very curious. What was it like for you in high school?
So I was actually cool in middle school.
Okay.
I grew up in Canada, but then we moved when I was 13 and I basically lost all of my friends. And these were friends that I had known when I was like 6 years old or so. So I was really confident being myself. And for some reason, when these are people you grow up with all of your life, I didn't feel as scared of their judgment because I knew that they knew me. And then when I moved, I wasn't as able to connect with people. So then I didn't feel confident being myself. So then I got really shy, got much more inward focus. And then I just said, you know what, I'm just going to focus on being the best in school. And I shifted my entire frame of self-achievement towards just academic and achievement because I struggled so much with the social aspect. It was really embarrassing. But I remember one time I brought a friend home from school and my mom started clapping. And she was like, no, this is not, it was humiliating. And she was like, Alex made a friend. And she did this in front of my friend, who wasn't even a real friend that I felt deeply connected with. Partly as a result of that, like I started like looking at other things, which might feel a little bit gimmicky because it felt like, the way I would describe it nowadays, like, is you're hacking certain situations. But I just needed so much of the help just to even start building the confidence to go and be in these social situations. And, at times it is overwhelming because there is so much information out there. But I think the most important thing is like the hope that you can change and you can develop these things.
Yeah, very similar. Kids tend to need something to define themselves by. They'll get them love and attention and all that kind of stuff. And for me, academics came easier. So it was the same sort of thing where I would be the smart one and not worry about athletics or worry about socializing or anything like that. And the advice that does come is often just be yourself, which is like, okay, that's not working.
Yes.
I need a line. I need something to say here. As I've gotten older, and I'm sure we'll get to this, I think it's really helpful to give people early in the developmental stages, like, say this, put your hands here, do this, like very cut and dry tips. But over time, you are learning in a way how to be yourself just without some of the constraints that you picked up, for instance, when you moved, right? Like that gets added onto so many people around middle school. That's an incredibly common experience for people. And then their 20s and 30s are like, can I learn to take these shackles off to not be so restrained when I'm around people? Because somebody teased me in middle school, or my mom clapped when I brought home a friend, or I was beat up or whatever it was. Yeah. But we all have these stories.
Yeah, and I remember I was watching one of your videos because one of the things that I always was self-aware about was how other people are viewing me in social situations. And I know you recommended like just trying to be in your body and focus on that instead. And like I would actually try to implement some tips like that, but I definitely needed more help. because it's not an easy journey. I think that's the other thing.
You're totally right. I'm learning that there's a time and a place for every tip, and the be in your body one it's actually a more advanced tip because it takes a lot of attention to be able to be like, okay, how does my butt feel while you're panicking about like my mouth is dry, I don't know what to say, I'm out of a joke, that person didn't laugh at what I just said last time.
You start feeling the blood rushing to your head.
Your blood rushing in your head. You're like, be in my body. This is not a good place to be. I just need something to say. So yeah, your journey mirrors my own, which is like, we need to start with, what do I say when I've frozen in conversation that can get a laugh and help me to loosen up? And then in time, it's like, okay, now can you be in your body that you're a little bit more comfortable? You're 20 minutes into conversation. Can you feel your butt on the chair and start to relax?
Yeah. And my sister, on the other hand, was very cool in high school.
Were you the cool one?
And I was not cool, but compared to my sister, you could say I was cool.
It's all relative. To me, I would look at her and I'd look at her, photos she's posting on Instagram, and me and my best friend Melina would be like, why did she skip the awkward phase? What happened to us? Because you always just,
Well, I mean, I also think social media is really misleading in that way, because you see photos of your sibling who maybe you're not that close with and you think, oh, they're the coolest, but you don't really know them on a day-to-day. If you guys are enjoying this episode and want to hear more of our conversations, we do have a Patreon. The link is in the description below. We have tons of BTS and exclusive community perks. So join our Patreon if you want to support us. Now back to the episode. Hearing your guys' experience on this reminded me of one of my questions, because it's interesting. You kind of see like self-confidence and being in your body. In my head, I see that kind of different from the tips for charisma. Mm-hmm. And I was curious, you mentioned you've been building your channel for 10 years, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
In these 10 years where you're just giving millions of people tips on, these are 5 things you can do to nail this interview. Is there ever a time where you feel like you're more just analyzing social scenarios, kind of thinking like, okay, what tip, quotation marks, do I use now, rather than being in the present moment? Like, do those other conflict?
Oh yeah, that's one of the tensions that's very alive. I think when you're first starting is, okay, we know what I'm doing isn't working. I'm not making the friends. I'm not getting the dates. I'm not feeling comfortable in social situations. Let's try feeling our body. Doesn't work. Let's try being ourselves. Doesn't work. Okay. Now what I did is when it got really complex, it was like, I have a decision tree. First, I will say this. Then if they respond, I will respond with one of 2 things. Then if they go left, I will go with them here, right?
Like a chess.
Are you talking my thoughts out loud right now?
That's exactly how I assess situations.
And I wonder if chess is like this too, where you're like, okay, I know how to do the first 4 moves, and these are the only possibilities. But if you stay in that non-present mode of being, there's a cap on how comfortable you can feel, how charismatic you can be. So it gets you off the runway, if you will. But then you have to switch out of tips into presence, mindsets, habits, things of that nature. So 100%. I've had entire sections of my life that were like structured in my own head because I'm hyper analytical like that. And that definitely is not where you want to land, because it just doesn't feel good to do it that way, even if you're getting good responses.
Can you give an example of something you're being hyper analytical that you had to change?
Oh, sure. I don't know if this is true. You guys can tell me, but the scariest thing for like a teenager, young 20s guy is a woman that he's attracted to. Like, that is the scariest thing. And that's where every bit of presence and I'll just be myself goes immediately out the window. So I don't know that I can give you a single experience, but it was just like, I need a line to say. And after the line, I need a joke to tell. And after the joke to tell, I need a way to talk about my work. And so like, I could get 6 minutes into conversation and just not at all have been present with the person that I was with. Maybe she was laughing, maybe she was into it, but it was all just like, can I not blow this? And I think that was where it came through most intensely for me. And I guess the downside of that as a result is I wasn't actually vetting if we were vibing. I was vetting if the analytical structure that I had built could get her to like me, but like, were we connecting at that point? And so it didn't have drastic blowups, but it just made it so that one of the things that I've had to develop in the last couple years is I used to think it was always my fault if an interaction was weird. Like if somebody didn't laugh when I thought they should, or if they seemed to walk away or get bored, I was like, damn, I fucked it up again. I screwed it. And it's only lately that I realized, which seems obvious, that people have their own stuff going on. So if we don't get along, perhaps it's something I did, but it's also very likely that they had a bad day, something's going on in their life, somebody's sick in their family. And so I've learned to, at first, take it very personally so that I could develop my skill of charisma. But lately it's just, it's not personal when there's not an immediate vibe or connection.
Or I think the example you gave of dates is very relatable. Before I found my love of my life, my boyfriend, I would be so exhausted, often even going to parties, going on dates, because rather it would be often with people who the conversation didn't really flow naturally, and then it didn't feel like the questions were natural. So I always kind of felt like I had to play a part and be like, okay, what's something interesting I can ask next? Because I know they're not going to do it. So I would just always overreact. And then I'd get so exhausted. And then I realized, okay, I need to kind of change the people I hang out with, which I think half of that maybe is fair analysis. But
that's a really good, I think that there's the initial stage often is people blame others. They're like, it's not me, it's them. I don't need to change it all. Then they develop this moment of like, I'm going to change everything about myself in order to fit in. But you do have to come back to, okay, I feel grounded in who I am. I know that some people like me. I know that I can be comfortable and funny. If we're not vibing, maybe we're just not meant to vibe. I don't need more skills or more confidence or more comfortability. It's like, this is just not working. So on those dates, did you find a point where you're like, okay, this isn't it?
yeah, I think I would cut it off after like the second date. I'd be like, this person's really nice. They check all the boxes. There's nothing wrong with them, but it should feel natural. And it did when I found my person.
Aw.
It's very funny to hear you talk about like being self-analytical, because I was really impressed when you went on Diary of CEO. You posted a video after on your channel saying the worst interview on Diary of CEO because he felt like he had failed. And when I watched that episode, I was like, this was an awesome episode. I didn't think any of your answers were too long. And again, as someone who's been doing this as a profession for 10 years, this year specifically, what do you think you have been working on and reflecting yourself on charisma, especially because you've been doing it for so long? I feel like at some point you run out of things to dissect.
Yeah, well, that one, to be fair, they cut out a good chunk of that interview.
But that's podcast. That's just the. I think that's normal. I don't think you blame yourself.
Magic.
Yeah.
I'm suddenly charismatic. Yeah, they threw AI in on top of it, the whole nine. Well, yeah. So yes, that was the one piece, and the second was, what am I learning this year?
Yeah, this year you've been focusing on the most, because I'm assuming every year is like a different journey.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know if we want to go down. It's been like a spiritual opening for me this year. Not something I ever thought that I would say. But if I look back at my arc, it was 20s, like outer development, if you will. How can I get my business working, make more friends, make more money, arrange the world to look a way that will make me feel good. Early 30s was like, oh crap, that didn't work. There's a lot of issues. And then the last year too has been spiritual opening. And just as an example of the outcomes, like I'm driving on the road to get here between Malibu and the other side, and it's these mountains, and I've driven them many times, but it's the first time like, holy shit, I'm 60 miles an hour on a freeway watching the mountains recede into the horizon with the sun glinting off, and I'm crying on my way over here.
Aww, that's so beautiful.
It's everything is more beautiful now, which has been I feel way more sensitive, which is scary, because I think especially young men learn, don't be too sensitive. Like, don't wear your emotions on your sleeve. Don't fall for her too quickly. Don't cry when things hurt. And so getting in touch with that has been scary and then beautiful as well.
And what helped open that up for you?
A lot. Started with the courses that I would go to. You guys there's all different names, but there are these like 3-day courses that are really intense, and they make you talk about your mom and your dad and stuff that you didn't think mattered. And so you bring that up. A little bit of therapy. I've done psychedelic infused therapy, which has been really valuable for me as well. Breath work, time away from the internet. Are you guys still active on Twitch?
We don't live stream as much anymore, a few times a month for sure, but we do keep up with the rest of our socials.
Got it. I'm curious because one of the things I've noticed is that having that chat just instantly giving you the most intense, sometimes negative feedback in real time. I'm curious how that has impacted you, or if it's something that you just don't see or you try to get away with. Because when I look at Twitch streamers, it seems like it invites mental illness. Like, not that you have to come in with it, but that just having that constant feedback of critique is going to make you react in one of two ways. Either you're going to like completely agree with the chat, try to get them on your side, become a people pleaser, or you're going to lock down, never take any critique from chat, tell them to go F themselves, sort of thing. And I've seen both of that. I'm curious if you guys have any experiences similar to those.
I'll add my take and then Andrea will go to yours. So we've actually, or I'll speak for myself so that you can give your thoughts, have been on a spiritual journey as well.
Oh, really?
And I have this theory that like you need to hit certain needs
Mm-hmm.
of, security and even like achieving things in your career before then you realize what really matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a full circle journey. And for us, at the end of the day, it ended up being very much about like, I want to make sure we're living a meaningful life that is in line with our morals and it's long-term sustainable because it's actually aligned with who we want to be as people. And we had been doing Twitch streaming for at least 5 years full time. And it had gotten to the point where it was getting really draining. And it wasn't just the hours live, but after it would take me hours to recover from just constant feedback from people. I, over the 5 years, even changed part of my personality, or like sometimes you have to dumb down things a little bit so that they work better for a general audience. And our chat, their chests and their, I'd say in a nice way, perhaps like not the regular chat. So it wasn't as bad, but it was still really influencing me deeply. And there was even a time where our Twitch streams were doing extremely well. We were like some of the most watched female streamers on Twitch. We were doing really great numbers and we were achieving all of these things, but it wasn't feeling good anymore inside. And it took us a really long time and big discussions where we decided, I don't think we want to focus on Twitch as a priority anymore. And it's one thing to say that, and it's another one like you actually have to like start turning down financial means and being like, this is we're gonna take a hit for this year, maybe next year, maybe the year after, because you never know how long it takes to transition your career, or even if you're going to be able to make it. But because it was so draining over time to like do it at that intensity, for me, I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, and so first, I'd like to say that I'm so grateful for our Twitch community. They brought us into this world, and I think every creator needs a niche to start in. And that kind of, you need to go through that experience to figure out what it is you really want. So after a couple years of us being full-time streaming, and I will say, I do think when you're live every single day and you're constantly reading feedback, I don't think it's not a coincidence that a lot of streamers do have big egos and they don't really have that much time to look deeply, mainly because you're always reading feedback. So you kind of get addicted to, if you do something good, you want to get rewarded for the good. If you do something bad, you need to look at it immediately. So it's both a mixture of like always being addicted to dopamine, which I definitely experienced when we were streaming, and just a lifestyle not really going hand in hand with what really might matter to you, which took me a couple years to realize. But it was one thing, the content I want to work on. Like I found that I really love music and I produce and I DJ, and music, like I started a separate channel, is really one of what I feel is like part of my gift to the world, and what I bring to the world is making mixes and music that I think people enjoy and connecting with people over that. The other thing is the podcast kind of just came to the conclusion, like I still want to be present in the chess community, but I think there's a more effective way to do it than being live a couple hours every single day doing online chess, doing the same thing. And by making most of our time offline, as in not live, we're able to film, in my opinion, better quality chess videos. So keep up with that, but also start a channel that I think is bringing more positive to the world than you can through streaming, which to me is really the podcast as well. So those kind of went hand in hand with us also changing things in our life, like Alex mentioned, getting more spiritual, really thinking deeply. Like our mom is getting older and she's kind of sick, and really matters right now is just like being close with loved ones while still figuring out work. And if you're always prioritizing streaming and work and the grind, you don't really have time for that as much. So I think it all came naturally to us. And I'm really happy now because when we do stream, I really love seeing our community. We're not streaming every day, every couple of weeks, but when I do connect with those people, it feels more special because I'm like, I don't get to do this every day. I really treasure that I can just talk live with people, but it's not to the point where I'm addicted to that cycle.
Wow. Well, I mean, gosh, you guys picked that up quick early in life. It took me many more years than it sounds like it's taken you guys to get
It took us a couple years.
It took us a while
It took us
too.
a while.
But you also experienced periods of burnout. What did that look like for you?
I think that what I've seen is, like you said, there's these needs that you get. So you need shelter and you need safety and you need emotional safety. You need someone to love you. And then you need to feel like you've contributed something meaningful to people's lives. And so I was in that zone and like the channel's taking off, things are going well. And I start making videos originally because I have a question. Like, why is everybody so into Donald Trump? I just wanted to understand this. And I'm making it. I remember I was making that video while the Super Bowl was on. And I was like, I want to be here. This is better than watching the Super Bowl. And so then that takes off. And then the next one takes off. And I'm start doing Game of Thrones. But pretty soon a structure starts to form itself, which is take a charismatic person, talk about what they like. And all of a sudden I lost the core of it, which is like, there's something that intrigues me. I have a question that I personally want answered and I want to share that with people. Became people like when I do this thing. So let me just press that button over and over and over again. And so this often coincides, like you'll see a lot of people see their biggest business successes come at the stage when they're creatively most burnt out. Because the thing that feels good is that exploration for a lot of creators. It's going somewhere the first time. It's trying stuff that doesn't necessarily work. And then the thing that doesn't feel good is like being the pigeon in the Skinner box who is just like dopamine, 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 food, food, food. So that began to happen to me. And what I didn't catch at the time was that there was a number of really key pieces that needed to shift probably 8 to 10 years ago that I didn't have the guts to change. The first was that my co-founder and I had different values. One is not better or worse, but they were going over time. It was like, oh, they're like slightly different. And then as you get further and further apart, if you have a rope connecting you that is this business, it becomes painful for each of you. So I didn't catch that, and I tried to ignore that we were walking in different directions, and I would try to persuade him to be more like me, and he might try to persuade me to be more like him, and we didn't just let each other move away. So that was a huge piece of it. And then I think that there is this like beautiful but painful thing if you don't know where to look, which is so many people in modern society, you guys, myself included, have this crazy opportunity to get everything you could ever want by age 30, which is insane. Like never before in history has that been available to normal middle-class people. There's one or two kings. If you know anything about the Buddha, he was a prince who had everything. And it was only by getting everything and then seeing suffering in the world that he started his journey of enlightenment. But that was never widely available to just a dude who grew up in Bucks County. So I'd gotten everything that I'd ever dreamed of, all the plans that I'd made in my early 20s. And then you find, oh, you know, the old cliche, it's just, it doesn't hit like you'd expected it to. And I think that was a core piece of the burnout, is that the center of what drove me was not spirit, heart, creative passion, but was people pleasing. The question, what will make them like me more? And that compounded over years just created like, I quit. I'm done. It's the business is the problem. And it took me a while to realize, oh no, there's nothing wrong with the business. The business isn't making you do anything. It's how you engage with the business. It's how you have chosen to make these videos.
Yeah, I agree with how you're explaining what the problem is. And I've come to understand that too. I'm at the stage now where I'm struggling with, is there actually a solution? And I think for me, it's because I've lived so much of my life, you know, prioritizing the wrong things. And, you know, part of it is the folly of youth. But how have you been able, now that you've learned this, to actually implement it in your day to day?
Yeah. Well, I think the scary thing is there's a death aspect. There's an ego death part of it that is terrifying. It seems like life is set up in such a way that there's these leaps where you're on one monkey bar, and in order to get to the other monkey bar, you got to let go of the one before you have the other. And it's this leap of faith, and it's a little scary, and you get indications that there's people that you admire that seem to be tapped into something that you're not, and will like give you, there's signals that you'll get. You'll start to enjoy certain things more and certain things won't be. But it's kind of what you said, which is you just can't do it the other way any longer. It's like the choice actually disappears. You're like, even if this works, I can't do the thing that used to get me liked, that makes money. And so concretely what that looked like for me was doing things that I never would have done. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do any of that. And I find myself signing up for an ayahuasca circle, which is just completely out of left field. In order that at the time, the thing that was most bothersome was I was getting over this breakup that was just like really, really cutting deep.
Are we the same person? I'd love to hear more about how your experience went.
So I could tell you quite a bit, but what I find where people have these devastating breakups around 30, what is often happening psychologically is that they're trying to feel complete through relationship with other people. And so what they do is they project qualities onto this partner that they actually deep down have in themselves, but don't know how to unlock. And then they try to force the relationship to work. It doesn't work. It breaks. And they have this feeling of like, I'm never going to get those qualities that I need again because they exist outside of me. And so for me, those qualities were, if I look at my 20s, it was the feminine qualities. It was like I was all about working hard and getting stuff done. I didn't have a television. I didn't play video games, which I adored when I was little. I didn't even let myself be the introvert that I am and was because I had to go do the thing. Except when I had a girlfriend, we get to do movie nights. We get to, I don't want to watch Disney, but now I'm watching Aladdin and Hercules, which I fucking love. But I can't possibly do that by myself. It's got to be for her, obviously. So that was, I didn't know I was going in with that, but in brief, I go into this place in California, which I won't say more than that because it's not legal. And there's 25 people. I don't know what I'm getting into. It's like, do you guys have recommendations? Like, just breathe. It's going to be fine. So we take this substance that they do in the Amazon and have for, I think, hundreds, if not thousands of years. There's a long tradition that people have since learned. And within, like, it comes on 40 minutes in, and all of a sudden I'm like, my co-founder is on the other side of the room. I'm like, psst. Oh, this is fucking lame. Let's get out of here. Let's go.
Oh, you guys went together to
we went
this.
together.
I didn't realize you went with your co-founder.
Yeah. There was
wow.
there was like 20 people. Oh, we were totally brothers, thick as thieves. It's unfortunate that we've fallen apart, but it needed to happen. Anyways, I'm like, let's get out of here. This place sucks. These people are crying and sad. I don't want to be sad. And he's like, dude, I'm having an experience here. I'm going outside. I'm like kicking rocks. I'm like throwing stuff. I'm like rolling in the dirt. They're telling me to come back in. I'm ignoring them. And I'm just having the time of my life. And I'm writing notes down and I'm like trying to send them to him.
Oh my
gosh. Like, totally disrupting. And
breaking all the rules.
Breaking all the rules. And so the next day we sit down and we describe our experience in this circle. And I was like a little bit embarrassed. And the facilitator says, that's very common. It sounds like your inner child came out. I was like, oh, really interesting. Because I was looking at the paper and I was writing like a 7-year-old. Like even the handwriting looked young. And she said, there's 2 nights. For this night, what I would really recommend that you do is ask this child if he's experiencing any pain. And I thought, okay, like I will. He seemed like a pretty happy dude, but whatever you say. So we go in, take the drink the next night. And immediately I feel it doesn't take 40 minutes. Other people are still drinking. And I'm like, hey, what's up, bud? How you doing? Yeah, so I was just told to ask you if you have any pain. I don't know. And immediately it was just like sadness. Like waves of sadness came over me. I'm like, whoa, don't want this. It's like, what's wrong? And he starts saying like, it makes me sad. You never let me play. I was like, what do you mean I don't let you play? Like we play guitar and we play with our friends. He's like, no, you don't play guitar. You practice guitar and you like analyze with friends. Like you don't let me play. And so the rest of the night was exploring the ways, like I told you with these Disney movies, like I didn't allow my inner child to exist except in relationship with a woman. And then that's going to make you hyper dependent upon relationships with women if critical pieces of your own psyche can't exist outside of that. So that was one. I've since done many, and we don't need to do a whole trip report unless you guys really want to of all of them. But they have been in that way where like some piece of me that I had forgotten about, lost contact with, comes back. That has been the overarching theme of them. And then lately the theme is like, oh, it's this spiritual piece of me. It's not just a therapeutic psychological memory. It's like this broader spiritual memory of being a non-physical thing and not having to worry so much about the end and death and all of those things because there's something that persists. So
that was really beautiful.
Oh,
And
thanks.
I love hearing both from you and Alex. I feel like I always learn something from these stories, whether or not, our takeaway is not go do this trip, but the lessons that you guys come to. I really related to the one that you said about your relationship. I think I came to my own realization where because my job felt like play, I was a streamer. I didn't let myself do any play on my free time either. And the only time I would is when I would go on a date. And like my favorite things, like go to a show, dance, listen to music. I'd only get that escape because I had a plan to do it. And the thing I was journaling about 1 week ago was I was like, oh, that is the part of me. Like that's my feminine, my playful side that I for so long associated as something to do with other people, but can do on my own. And I mean, that's why music for me was like my escape and my realization when we came out of Twitch. So I really related to that. And that was a really beautiful story.
Oh, thank you.
And it reminds me a bit of a quote I saw, and it was about couples in love. It went along the lines of, I'm not just looking for someone to grow old with, I'm looking for someone I could stay a child with. And I think that applies even if you're not with your person, but you know, over time we lose a lot of those childlike qualities, which in a way I think at least shows a mirror to what your most authentic self is.
Yeah. They say that artists and other, are just people that didn't lose the child in them. And so it's, you said you felt like you played as a streamer. I think it's these people in these jobs that are like, they look on the outside like silly and fun, are often the people that are the least in touch with play. Yeah. Because they found a way to turn enjoyment into consumptive work. And so they're like, oh, I play all the time. It's like, you never play. There's always a view. There's always a brand deal. There's always a something. And I've seen that amongst people who you would think have their dream job, but it has become effortful and labor for them. And there's no, play is purposeless. It's just for the shits and giggles, for the fun of it. And it's not directed at, you got to pay me money or like me or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it's the trap of monetizing your creativity or your passion that then starts to actually take away from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's really hard to balance over time. How do you make a career out of something you're passionate about without losing that?
This is a very active question for me. I do, and I've seen people where the beautiful thing is there is a way, and it is with a really strong sense of self. Like, it's the ability. I think it's really hard to maintain yourself when everybody's jeering and yelling at you. You could all imagine that people are like, you suck, you're ugly, you're this, change your clothes, you got to, it would make you feel very uncomfortable. It's also very hard to maintain a sense of self when everyone's clapping for you. Like, when everyone is, oh, that's so good, you did so great, I love what you're wearing, that looks so great. It's so hard to remember who you are that is not the cheers outside of you. And so I think that, yes, anything that you can do to develop more internal referencing rather than external as to what is meaningful and valuable in your life. And I do think, this is what I hope, I'm betting on it, is that you can have a career that is full of passion, that you make money on, without losing yourself in the success of it. Or on the flip side, like, I'm nothing because nobody watches my YouTube channel. I made a Dungeons and Dragons show, nobody cared, but didn't wind up breaking my spirit.
Are you still doing anything for your Dungeons Dragons channel?
My friends don't want to play with me. I need different friends. Yeah. If you guys want to play.
I'm down to try at least once. No, isn't Dungeons and Dragons where you make up stories?
Yes, it is.
That makes sense.
It is spontaneous friends making up stories.
Of liking that. I don't want to like it. I have enough weird hobbies. And the interesting thing about Dungeons and Dragons is that like I'd be a little shy to get creative.
Yeah.
But if I was a kid, I would have gotten creative and right into it instantly. And again, like, there's something that was lost from childhood to becoming an adult that's like, oh, I don't want to be cringe or dorky.
Yeah, we all have that. Like, everyone at one point, for guys or boys, it's like, I'm going to be Batman. Like, I'm Superman. It's like, well, I have kryptonite and you can't do it. It's like, well, I fly. Like, it's just, that's Dungeons and Dragons, is just declaring who you are, what you're going to do within a world that has dice that determine the outcome of things. And so that flexible ability to express yourself through the eyes of another character is actually, like, I think it can be a very emotionally cathartic experience to, in the same way that writing a book, a fiction book, can allow you to like express pieces of yourself that you wouldn't be able to. Dungeons and Dragons does that, but it's in real time in front of other people in a fun way, and there's an objective. So yeah, it's not that you need more nerdy hobbies, but it's a good one.
Just another one to add to the list. So what advice would you have for people who are trying to become comfortable with their self?
I think I would go back to the stages. So I would say, ask yourself, if you've taken a period of time to enter into this self-improvement, like you mentioned Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes.
Have you spent time doing the basic skills related to charisma, confidence, etc.? And if you don't know what those are, you haven't, for instance, read, like, try to remember people's names and then say it to them when you're speaking to them, or anything that's on my channel or something like that, I would actually recommend that you do start with the grounded tips, mindsets, habits thing. If you've been in that field for a while, I would recommend as a simple on-ramp, something that is, not psychedelics can be a little dangerous and tough to procure and illegal. Breath work is really cool. Have either of you ever done breath work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think this is a really cool one because the technology is literally your body. You're taking deep breaths and then oftentimes there's a track. I can recommend tracks if that's interesting, but you can find them anywhere on Spotify. There's one called Breathworks that is by a friend that I think is great. It's a website. And what this does is you find emotional gunk that is inside of you in this process. And what you don't realize, you said that you were dealing with like real depression. Mm-hmm. So if you try to go be charismatic and you try to layer on top of that these lines, but underneath you're just feeling
then
depressed.
I'm masking.
And yeah, you're just masking this depression. Like, hi everyone, how you doing? Charlie, remembering my name, and it's going to come through with this whole depressed feeling, and you're not going to get the result, and you're going to wonder, are these even skills? Are these true? If you can find ways to unlock and feel the feelings beneath it, which oftentimes are stuff that we didn't give ourselves time to experience at one earlier point. So I don't know exactly what happened with you, but I imagine as you moved through the depression, how do you feel with that, by the way? Do you feel like you're in it still, moving through?
I'm finally in a better place. And I think a big part of it was just tying my self-worth to achievement.
Mm-hmm.
And when you tie your self-worth to achievement, as soon as you hit something, cool, but what's the next thing?
Yeah.
And the losses feel so much worse than the wins. And then in the moments where there's nothing to achieve, I would feel really empty. So I had to work on really nourishing my life in other ways and feeling whole and realizing that's not the entire purpose. But first I had to realize it, and then I had to actually be like, how am I cultivating joy this week? Like, when am I actually spending time with my friends? When am I working on myself? Am I exercising? Am I eating right? And just fixing that foundation.
Got it. Were there feelings that were uncomfortable that came up around the depression? Like you said, feeling empty or feeling, for instance, grief or anything like that?
I just never felt good enough in anything I did. And it was always for my external validation. Like, I felt if I'm not achieving things, then what is the point?
Yeah.
And I couldn't get my value outside of that.
Got it. So this I would say might be interesting for you and is like the next stage. So there's this, you can have these realizations and these mindsets, and you can build habits to help you behave in ways that are good for you. And there can still be, like, in your pipe, emotional gunk stuck to the sides of it. So things like breath work, but particularly for you, grief is often a big one, because what we'll have when we start to feel these feelings, if you really allow yourself to invite in the feelings that we haven't wanted to feel, grief for lost relationships, grief for periods of our life that we weren't able to be fully there, when you start to feel that, one, you're going to feel grief, you're going to cry, you're going to like stuff, but it's actually moving the emotional gunk that is stuck to the side of the pipe through which your life flows. And what I found is that when you're able to do that and create safe enough spaces where you can cry or laugh or make weird noises or sing or howl with pain and anxiety, there's just like more space for the joy and the enthusiasm to move through as a result. So that's, again, more of an advanced thing. And it sounds like you guys are far along on your journey, but that's something that I see myself doing in my teachings and work stuff for people that are ready for that kind of stuff, because it's profound when you start to have a safe space to feel helpless, grief. In your case, for instance, the time lost in depression, you know what I mean? The things that you weren't able to say or do or feel in that moment. We all, like, grief is not optional in this life. Like, every moment we are losing now. And we have all lost people, friends, family, experiences. If we don't let ourselves feel grief for that, we get stuck. And I have to give credit to Art of Accomplishment and Joe Hudson for this stuff. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he's got great trainings around this.
I relate with grief a lot. I, back in the day, used to be really embarrassed of crying. And then obviously as I got older, I realized it's just my body regulating itself, and it's actually a good thing to do that. And if you suppress it, it's a lot worse. And Andrea, I know you've seen me crying a lot of times. The one thing I've gotten better with is like really sitting with my grief and understanding that like the only way through is not to ignore it or to shove it down, but to actually sit with it and face it. And that's, you can't rush healing, and you can't out-logic your emotions.
Yeah. With grief, what I would say to any guy or girl who is not sure about it is, imagine going through life where you lived in a culture that told you it's not okay to laugh. Like, imagine the crap that would be occurring inside of you if every time, and you can see this sometimes in cultures where they feel like they have to cover their mouths when they're laughing or something like that, the stifling effect it would have to not be able to laugh. It's the same thing with crying, taking a poop, or any of this. Like these are like you said, your body needs to regulate and express itself. And if you don't allow it these modes of expressing itself, it has to compensate. And disease builds up, discomfort builds up, psychological distress, all these sorts of things. And so it sounds cheesy, but yeah, learning how to cry is a huge hack. It's a huge unlock.
Especially for men, because women are more allowed to cry in society. But as a man, you're told it's a sign of weakness. Like my dad has barely cried throughout his life. And I think a lot of people relate with that. How do you think men can have a more comfortable relationship with crying?
Well, I hope to be an example. Like, you know, I cried in Diary of a CEO. Like what we've seen is like, it's only okay to cry at your dad's funeral and like maybe the birth of your child, but nobody's going to be there except your wife to see it. Like that's broadly it. Or if your buddy dies in war, then you can cry in that moment or at the funeral. And that didn't even used to be the case. Like it seems like 100 years ago, you just never cried as a man. So I hope that having figures that people have admired, demonstrate it, model it, live it, come through it. I think the big fear around crying is twofold. It's one, which is this has happened to guys. Like they cried when they were 7 and they got teased, you know, and that was real. This is another one that's tough is they're getting conflicting messages from the media about what women and girls like. And so they cry when they're 15 years old in front of their girlfriend. She says he wants them to be more vulnerable. And then she's not really sure about that. And then she breaks up with him in a week. Like, I can't tell you the number of guys that I've talked to that have a story like this where
crying is very, very sexy. I actually mean that.
You think so?
Oh yeah. If I've ever been with somebody romantically and they cry, like I always am so appreciative that they're willing to be vulnerable.
Even if it's a little thing like they tear up during a movie, like it makes me like them more because I'm like, oh, it's sweet that they feel like it's never like I look down on them. It makes me like them more. And even if it's going through something, but maybe that's just the way we were raised.
Yeah.
But whenever that happens, it makes the attraction grow stronger. But I know that it's probably not the same when you're getting bullied at school.
Yeah. I don't know about you two, but a lot of women say they want vulnerability. And then it's like, oh, you're going to have a tear at a movie. But it's like, what if he breaks down? Like, what if he's racked with sobs? That scares a lot of people. And not just like, oh, I'm unattractive, but it's scary to see a guy that is bigger, stronger than you lose control like that. So I know just a lot of guys have felt burned by, okay, I'm going to try to be vulnerable. And then they're vulnerable and it just does not go well. And they learn never doing that again. So having spaces where they did get vulnerable were and are received by the people who are present around them, are not abandoned afterwards. It's not like you're lower on the totem pole in the friend group. You're like loved still, transformative, and requires a community of people that you can trust, right? That requires a therapist or friends that are like fairly highly developed in order to do that. And then the other thing, just internally, there's this fear because when you start turning on the waterworks after 20 years of not doing it, it's like a clogged pipe that has a lot of stuff to come out. You're going to wonder, am I ever going to stop feeling sad and crying? And the truth is, like a clogged pipe, it's going to be muddy for a little while. It's going to be messy and muddy, and the tears are going to come unbidden more often. But you will get to a place of just much more flow. Like I'm driving over, I'm crying at the mountains, I'm good. I listen to a song, I cry again, I'm good. We sit here, so it can flow more fluidly, much like if you saw a child, like a 2-year-old is like crying. Okay, there's something fun. Like able to pop in and out of emotions quickly as needed. And the difference between a 2-year-old and a 40-year-old is that you have context. You understand you're in a board meeting. Now it's not the time to completely break down. Like I can do that. Like you have a bit more control over the emotional tap, just not off for 3 decades and then all on at once.
And how much of finding this space do you think, like right now you're mentioning communities, earlier you mentioned breath work. When you were mentioning the breath work, one thing I was thinking about is specifically what's helped me to come to have a space for these conclusions a lot of times is on my own. Like I started doing a small thing where in the morning I'll do a 10-minute meditation out in the sun, And then I started a shadow work journal, which just asks you, often it's questions that feel really small and like something you don't think it's important. Then it's funny because after you sit and answer it, maybe later in your day, you find yourself like actually applying or thinking about what you wrote on. So I'll do like a specific prompt because that's why I like prompts. I'll do my own journal. I'll read 2 pages of the letters from a Stoic from Seneca to feel extra wise. And I find that even having a small routine, like so much I see for me at least was kind of having like this meditation routine. How much do you think is for people to, you know, improve the things you're saying right now, having communities who help and also putting in the work yourself and doing, let's say, your own meditation, like writing every day, journaling, like where do you draw the line between self-work, community work?
They're both so essential. First off, I'm so impressed. Do you mind me asking how old are you, Andrea?
I'm 23.
That's wild. Shadow work at 23.
I've had a lot of good friends in my life who have, like, it was a gift actually.
Yeah.
You should get a shadow work journal. Do you have one? I want to get my whole family on it. My sister and my mom. I recommend it.
I feel like I do shadow work in a different way, but
your own
continue.
journal. Yeah.
It just makes me very, very excited. Like shadow work not too long ago was this like fringe Carl Jung didn't exist. And then only like 70-year-old psychologists were even beginning to do it. And to know that you're doing it at 23 and talking to people about it is so cool.
Andrea,
That's
can you
incredible.
describe what shadow work is for people who might not understand?
Yeah. So the goal is to get to know your deeper self. I mean, really just, this is me without knowing any definitions, just from my experience doing it. It asks you questions about yourself that maybe you've never thought before. So I find it different from regular journaling or therapy because rather than trying to address something intentionally, like, oh, this is bothering me, I'm going to think about it, it just makes you think about things that maybe don't come to the surface. And that's like getting to know your deeper self. I don't know if that's a good definition.
It's great.
Let me know.
It's great. To add to it, there's when we're born and we come in, like we're everything. Like we love this, we love that, we're happy, we're sad, we cry, and we're chiseled away over the course of our life by what we're rewarded for and what we're punished for. And so, for instance, it is very common that the shadow of men and boys is sadness, fear, grief. And it's very common that the shadow of women is anger, assertiveness, rage, those sorts of things. Now, you're going to have broad cultural shadows. Like I said, like men, it's tough for them to cry. And women, if they get too angry, they're considered bitches, right? So there's these like cultural shadows, but there's also very personal shadows of things in your life that you just couldn't feel or be at the time. And so that's why, unlike therapy where you go and you're like, I want to talk about my boyfriend, this is like, I don't know the things that I've lost track of inside of myself. So these prompts can help wake pieces of you up that you're like, I don't care at first. And then you're like, oh my God.
That's a really nice definition.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
The way I do shadow work, and I know I'm a little bit addicted to ChatGPT.
So good.
And, you know, obviously it's sometimes tough to be putting so much of your personal information into an LLM owned by like one of the, I'm not going to get into that. But I do journal most days or every other day. And I usually share that journal entry with ChatGPT and I have it reflect. And then I also have it ask me questions that I might not be thinking about or prompted like, what do you think I'm missing? What do you think I need to know? What do you think I need to be asked? And I've actually had a lot of breakthroughs through doing that. And of course, I would love to do it with a therapist, but you know, this is a way that it's more sustainable for me to be able to do it at the end of the day. I don't know when I'm going to finish my work or going to be in bed, but I have 20, 30 minutes to do it. And over time, it's just been such a healing tool for me. So I do my shadow work a little differently.
I'm curious for you just to clarify, do you first journal without chat what you're feeling and then take a photo after, or do you start the journaling with chat?
I write in my notes the journal and then I copy it and then I put it. And the other day I asked ChatGPT, what do you think it is I really want? And it gave me the most, it knew completely, put it better into words than I did myself. And I was like, wow. I can't believe Sam Altman knows this much about me, you know. But do you do it differently?
Yeah, it's interesting because to me, doing it like on a phone takes away from the personal part of it, which is why I like doing it outside on paper. And so that's why I haven't. But then I thought about it, I was like, oh, I should actually go back, take photos of all my entries, then submit it in chat. I just think, especially now knowing that ChatGPT kind of tells you what you want to hear. And I'm sure that also
You can
it
prompt it
knows-
differently. Like you could add a prompt in the settings, which is like be completely unbiased. And obviously it still has some biases, but even with that, like if you're actually using your own discernment in the replies, I think it can still be very helpful.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you that it can still be helpful. I think that's why at the beginning, like when I have a problem, I try not to come right away to chat because I know it might give me more what I want to hear, but first try to reflect on it solo. But then I like the idea of maybe putting in the pages later. I need to think on that a bit more. What are your thoughts on using AI for this?
I'm in your boat. Like Sam Altman's got me blackmailed up and down, like whatever he needs. I'm his puppet. No. I've put my soul into ChatGPT. Like there's nothing that I've withheld from it. And so there's obviously the security risk, but it has been, I think ChatGPT is going to help people get enlightened so much faster. I think it runs the risk of helping people become delusional so much faster as well. But if you have the discernment and you don't let the tool grip into your shadow and just tell you that you're the greatest thing ever, it is, I think I know it's been a fast track for me to self-development lane. But you'd ask a question that I didn't get to, which is groups versus individual stuff. So briefly, let's start with value of solo work. The value of solo work is often that you can be more honest. Like what you can write alone in your diary is going to be more than you're capable of sharing even with your closest friend. So solo work can take you to like the edges of who you are. Group work is really important for feeling stable in that because it's like, look, I can be honest with my diary, but can I be honest with my wife? Can I be honest with people in my life? And so both are really valuable. The first one gives you this like expansive ability to explore, and the other one builds it into your nervous system. So you're like, it is safe to be this way in front of other people. And one without the other is just incomplete. But I think they both have a time and a place.
And what would you recommend for people who maybe don't have this supportive group? Because that's one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
Especially for the younger generations that are growing up so much online, and you miss a lot of those friendships when you're not face to face.
It's really hard. So this is what's scary.
You go to ChatGPT.
You go to ChatGPT. Well, the good news is that there are those things that are like, look, at least ChatGPT is not going to bully you, right? Yeah. I would recommend that. So if you've got the financial means, you can start to look for a good therapist. Like there are people who are professionally offering essentially space holding services. So there's men's groups and there's women's groups and there's all sorts of things. If you don't have that or you've exhausted that option, I think what I would recommend is to bring more vulnerability into your present relationships and see how those relationships respond. You may be surprised by who and how people are actually present and there for you. I know that there was a friend, for instance, when I was going through this, that I'd loved him, but just never really talked about this. And I didn't realize that he'd had a series of losses in his life that when I started, he was just like, he knew how to be with suffering and pain. And I had no idea that he could be there for me in that way. And there were other friends that, not to their, nothing wrong, but like when I brought it up, didn't know how to be. And so you can't necessarily predict who is the safest right person when you're starting this. And there is, again, a little bit of a leap of faith where you're sharing something and it might not be handled well by someone. So you got to be both a bit cautious, but I think also brave in terms of stepping a little bit outside of yourself. And there's going to be chances, the girl, you're going to cry and she's going to dump you. That's going to happen from time to time.
But it's like your dating advice. You have to see how people react to you as well.
You have to know, because if let's say you're dating the girl, you're not crying, but if you did cry, she'd leave you. It's like, you'd like to know that so that you could be yourself, have her leave you and get that done sooner than later.
Yep. Being with the wrong person also keeps you from finding the right person.
Exactly. And it keeps you from finding yourself. If you think you've got the right person insofar as you never go outside of this tiny little box, but then you do go outside of the box, all of a sudden the relationship doesn't work. It's like the relationship didn't work. And that's scary for people because they've probably, so many people haven't had relationships that want all of them. And they're used to having to cut off pieces of themselves to fit in. And then they build lives and with jobs that they don't like and friends that they don't truly get along with and hobbies that they're not that into because they do not believe that they can be their full selves. And so they actually haven't taken the losses and then the exploration to find the people, the places, the work, the hobbies that do want them.
That's actually one of my theories of depression and why it's so prevalent nowadays. It's all these silent shackles you have that are really hard to undo. Like when you're going to a job you don't like every day for years, or you're in a partnership which isn't, let's say, the best fit, or you're so busy and you're not taking care of your body. And then you start feeling like, oh, I have depression. It's all these mental issues, but it's so much more this holistic problem. And part of what's so hard is because sometimes all of that has to fall apart for you to rebuild a life from scratch that is aligned with who you want to be long term. And that part is just so scary for people to take the leap that then they stay stuck in this instead and, find other ways to treat their depression. At least for me, everything had to collapse and rebuild for me to actually work through my depression.
Yeah, that is not an at least for you. That is, you're right. That is like for everybody. There is an unconscious wisdom to depression. It's tough to decipher when you're in it and listen to, but there's something in your life that needs to be broken. The problem is that people can think, oh, it's me. I need to be broken. It's
and
like,
I've been there, yeah.
Yeah, it's like this job needs to be broken. This way of relating to other people needs to break. This way of relating to myself needs to break. And until you have the courage, the exploration, the support to start to figure out what that thing is that needs to break, energy is not going to flow to your system. This is one of the crazy things about being a person is we all know that like you can eat, 2,000 calories a day and be completely wiped, or 2,000 calories and be at the like incredibly happy. It's like, where does that energy come from? It comes from not fighting with yourself on the inside, being aligned with internally and externally with your life, feeling like you're connected to a purpose and a community. I wouldn't go so far to call it depression, but I experienced that like period of years where I was resting more than I'd ever rested and still was tired constantly. And it was that disconnection from purpose, meaning, and the part of me that knows which way to go to find those things.
So I found your greater analysis of popular culture really entertaining, like when you would break down elections or cancel culture, like the Will Smith slap and how he apologized. And maybe you don't have any specific thoughts on this, but also I'm assuming, you have this channel where you're probably reading people's questions year after year. Do you think as a society we're getting better at being more self-aware of these things that we're all talking about? Like, do you see any trends going upwards or downwards?
Oh my gosh, I'm sitting next to a 23-year-old who has a shadow work journal.
Well,
like,
that's true.
Like, yeah, that's unreal. We're getting so much better.
Outliers, do you think?
Yeah, you guys are certainly outliers. And you have a huge audience that is listening to you. Like, you're definitely cutting edge. California tends to be cutting edge of culture for America. America tends to be cutting edge of culture for a lot of the world. And influencers are cutting edge of all of those things. And of course, there's like different threads. There's always going to be that materialistic thread of, buy my consumer packaged good or whatever. But I'm very optimistic about what I see broadly. And I do think similarly, I think cultures have these phases of breakdown because something's not working. And I think if you look, because you can also point to all of these broader issues in our culture, issues with men and women relating to each other. They're having a harder time than ever. Young men are more conservative. Young women are more liberal. Young men are more likely to be incels and have no friends and all those sorts of things. I think while that is acutely painful in the short term, it's a part of a broader breakdown that is this way that we're doing things isn't working. And so I think it's going to be challenging and hard, and I'm very optimistic for what comes out on the other side of it. Because I think the things that work, when it's only when you're really desperate that you're willing to try ayahuasca or something like that, or a shadow work journal, or a different way of doing things. And I think we're getting increasingly desperate as a culture, which is not fun, but I think is necessary.
What do you think it would take to rekindle some of those differences between men and women?
Broadly, I'll speak personally because I've seen this in my own life. People don't respect their own shadow. So the shadow of most men is the feminine, right? And the shadow for most women is the masculine. And it's cliche, but you complain with your female friends about like, I don't know, why are boys like this? And we do the same thing. It's like, I can't fucking stand her. And they think that women should be, for instance, like less in their feelings or more logical. And I want my girlfriend to move at the faster abstract pace that I do. And she wants to go slow. Like we're looking at houses and I'm looking at these very quick. I'm like, no. She's like, she wants to go see it, feel it, touch it, get the vibe of it. I'm like, this is a waste. But I'm learning from her that she's not wrong. Like there's actually information that can be gathered when you're way more present and move at a slower pace than I want to, for instance. And I think that's not a hard masculine feminine difference, but it often is one, which is men are more abstract, logical, and women are more felt, intuitive experiencers. And so I think it is learning the men are from Mars, women are from Venus thing. It's actually recognizing that men have a feminine shadow that they can come into contact with and begin to appreciate. And I started doing that when I played more, did video games, moved at a slower pace, etc. And my girlfriend, which I think is happening with women more broadly, are like entering the workplace starting in the 50s and 60s, are becoming independent, capable of providing their own containment and safety, which was never the case. They always had to have a guy do it for them. And so I think women are encountering the struggles that men have had for hundreds of years of like, oh shit, being a provider sucks. It's not fun to like pay for all these employees and not be appreciated and just have people like look at you for what more they can, those sorts of things. And I think as you have more women experiencing the masculine joys and challenges and more men experiencing the feminine joys and challenges, like, oh man, I'm crying and nobody's helping me. This sucks. There's more opportunity for healthy relating between men and women.
It's interesting because I was discussing with my friends earlier this week, and one of my guy friends was talking to me about how he feels like gender roles, at least in our age, are switching a little bit.
Yes.
Where even guys are looking for a girlfriend and they really want that, but now women are a lot more independent and choosy and focusing on themselves. So it definitely feels like both sides might at some point have more empathy for what the other gender was historically going through that could maybe lead them to converge back together.
I have that hope, and I see that. And you start to see the rumblings of it with women that have like heavily focused on their careers and gotten to their late 30s, early 40s and are like, oh shit, I feel like I've missed out on something. It's like, yeah, like a lot of men, even if they have kids who have spent all their time in the office, have been feeling that. And so hopefully if we learn from one another and can read the tea leaves, if you will, of like what other people are experiencing, we'll see, okay, there's a way to have this union that works better than it did in the past. And I think one of the things that I think is broadly happening is the masculine was like really heavily held by males and men. It was like, we're going to fight the wars, go out and protect, earn money. We're not going to take care of any of the decorations, any of the feelings, or any of the child rearing. Like that's just, I don't know how to, a lot of men like took pride in never having changed a diaper. Women are like, we're not going to learn how to make any money. We're not going to know how to do anything. We're not even, and this wasn't by choice, but they weren't even voting. We're like, we're not involved in civic duty, but we are going to be completely in charge of the household, completely in charge of the feelings, all of the child rearing, all that kind of stuff. So that was historically how we had to do it, I think, given the difficulty of just living in a pre-industrial age world. It's really hard. So you have this division of labor. I think now there's an opportunity for people to be more fully integrated in themselves and then have pairings where it's like, if I have a kid, can change the diaper and can do some of the child rearing and can be there for the emotional stuff. And my girlfriend or wife, if we do that, like can provide financially. And she is, she's in, I'll just give you an example that was never available. She's doing a fairly maternal job, which is cat rescue, but she shares her stuff on Instagram and she's capable of making brand deals and providing money to the family. That wasn't available. Like you couldn't get paid for motherly love 20 years ago. It just didn't exist. And now there's these new opportunities. So I'm personally in my relationship hopeful. I hope that it's a cutting edge example of what more people are going to get to experience. Though you don't have to. If you want a traditional masculine feminine, go knock yourself out.
I'm curious. I'm not obviously relationship expert, so I don't know any stats on this, but I'd be curious if we were to look at number of divorces. And I would assume that with people now taking more time, for example, women being more masculine and having more independence, that means that they will look for a relationship later, which is, yes, they delay it, but I would also assume that that means when they do get one and when they do get married, rather than in the past when it's like the pressure to get married right away and have kids, you sometimes don't end up with the right person. There's more divorces. Now when they do settle, they're right away with the right person. So I'm curious if there's any things that
I've looked
numbers.
into those stats.
What are the stats?
There are lower divorce rates for people who get together in their 30s, actually.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a good sign for society.
And it's also, the first time in human history, particularly for women, but also for men, where there's the least amount of pressure to be with another person. So if you're making that conscious choice, you're way more likely to be a good fit for each other than ever before. And to have such luxury and freedom over one of your biggest life decisions, I think is just something that we should not take for granted and realize like how special of a time to be alive that we get to make that choice.
Well said. I mean, it's a tremendous privilege and a responsibility. Like if you look at pairing 100, 200, 500 years ago, was an economic decision decided by someone else is the only person you're ever going to sleep with, and you guys need each other. This isn't like, do we love each other? This is, we need each other in order to survive. The blessing is that we no longer have that. We've been able to provide these needs in other ways. And the responsibility is, okay, how are we going to relate to each other when we're not just bound to one another in this way? Can we do it from a place of exploration, wanting, desire, and love rather than necessity, I think.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about male and female differences, and a lot of our audience is male dominated. So do you have any tips for men on how to talk to women?
Do I have any tips? Yes. Give me some context on your, like, how old are they? What's their demographic? Give me the...
So our demographic, our biggest demographic is between 18 to 44. I'd say most of the single people are probably between, 18 to 35. So let's say like a 25-year-old who has never had a girlfriend. He's really looking for that, but he's intimidated to approach women and he needs some help.
Got it. Okay. So this is going to be someone probably on the shyer end of this. Okay. It's very helpful at this stage to have a line to, so because normally what I try to do is look at the guy and I can say, okay, this guy is never going to approach a woman in the street, or this guy's like, so, but if I understand broadly, there's a couple of ways that you can meet women, right? You can just, during your day, there are women in the grocery store, there are women in the street, they're out there. And if you're willing to put yourself out there, which I highly recommend, it's actually one of the easiest and best ways to meet women is during the day. Because if you wait for a dating app or if you wait for a nightclub, she's getting just completely talked to all the time. Versus during the day in the grocery store, I mean, I don't know, I'd be curious. Can you count, like, how many times have you been approached in a grocery store or something like that? You guys have influencer status.
A couple times, but usually it's usually kind of creepy when it does happen. So it's,
we'll teach them how to not do it creepy, but at least it made an impression. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you can stand out much more easily during the day. Now, the question is how to do it without being awkward and creepy. Do you remember anything about these encounters?
I mean, usually the guys who unfortunately do have the ball, like sometimes I'm just like walking on the street and like someone will like come and pull down their window. So that's kind of weird. Or like in the car. Yeah. So it's usually like, oh, like I saw you and you're just the most beautiful girl I've ever seen.
They took my line. They didn't do it right though.
That's the line?
Yeah. Well, it's not my line. That's like the line. Okay.
I don't know if that worked for me, but I think it's the way that they did
let's break it down. Yeah.
But I guess, for example, when I'm
just not on Andrea.
When I was walking in the street, that didn't work. But also that was because I was not interested. So for example, let's say if it was a guy who was really compatible, I bet I would have been like, ooh, but maybe it's because I was very not.
Okay, so you weren't physically or whatever attracted to them. Do you remember the energy that they did it with? Do you
usually sometimes people are really nice when they do it too. But yeah, all the times that happened to me, I don't know how to say it in a nice
Say it in the mean way.
I was just not interested.
You were not attracted.
And usually people will ask a lot of things. They would be like, what's your Instagram or what's your, and I'd be like, no. If they ask for my Instagram, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like when they ask for social media because then it reminds, because it's LA, we're in Central LA. So like, I feel like the people were like, oh, you look beautiful. Give me your IG. I'm like, I don't really like those people.
Okay, so this all fits within the worldview, which is one. It's not going to go every time. If you also do it in a strange way, and you've gone right for the phone number or the Instagram, it's probably not going to happen.
It's hard to do right, to be fair.
The best way, which is like to be completely present and spontaneous to the moment, and say something that is unique to the situation. That's really hard, right? So we're going to structure a line, and it sounds like these guys may have heard something like it, which is.
Can I set a scene?
Yes.
Wait, I have an idea or two. Go ahead. You first. You
guys are at Trader Joe's. You're in the cheese aisle. Andrea is looking at some artisan crackers.
Artisan crackers.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll give this. The nice thing about this particular line is that you don't need anything. But if you were there, present to the situation, I don't know, maybe you make a comment that you guys are both searching for crackers and cheese. Like, you have any charcuterie tips for me? Like, whatever playful thing that you want to say. The line that I imagine you got before is, hey, I know this is totally random and out of the blue, but I saw you. I thought, and then insert honest compliment. I thought, and I'd be kicking myself for the rest of the day if I didn't say hello.
Yeah, that's a nice way to.
It's very sweet.
That is really
it's
sweet.
like, so here's why it works. Hey, I know this is totally random. It acknowledges the social strangeness of the situation. but I saw you. You're providing context. You know, you're not like creeping around. Like I saw you, and I thought, whatever. I thought you had an incredible sense of style. I thought you had beautiful eyes. I thought you, whatever it is that struck you about her. And I would be kicking myself for the rest of the day if I didn't say hello, or if I didn't learn more about you. And you say, hey, what's up? What are you up to today? You know, I'm around. I live here. Da da da. And then the conversation is basically just normal. What are you up to? Where do you live? Where do I live? This is what I'm up to. It's very helpful in these conversations to know, because you're probably gonna be, your heart's gonna be beating out of your chest in this moment. And I've experienced that. The type of fun, interesting things about you that just kind of have on speed dial. So for instance, when I lived in New York City, I liked salsa dancing, and I knew that like for 85% of women, if I said, yeah, you know, what do you like to do? I like to go salsa dancing. They'd be like, oh my God, I want to go. I've never gone, but I would love to do it. Like knowing the thing that you have that gets that reaction then creates an opportunity to say, oh, well, I can take you sometime. There's this awesome place on Tuesdays where they have X, Y, and Z. Like, give me your phone number. You don't want to ask for the Instagram or the phone number without like a purpose. Like I am going to contact you for this purpose versus, you know, at the end of the conversation, it's funny, but like ones that I've done in the past, dog dates, salsa dancing, walks in the parks, you know, I can't remember all the shared interests, but there's a purpose for asking for it. So that's one example.
It's nice when a guy wants to do a real activity and they don't want to just watch movies or play basketball. So I think that already gets you above the others.
Another starter that is great for like you're at a closed circle social event and you don't want to be going up to every girl like, hey, I just saw you there. And they're going to all get together and then say, does that guy just do this? Is, hey, I don't think I've met you yet. I am your name. And this one is really good. It's got like little secret powers in it that are built in, which is if you walk up to someone at a closed social circle event, you say, hey, I don't think I've met you yet. Implicit in that is that you're the type of person that introduces themselves and meets a lot of people. You can use it with guys. You can use it with girls. It works repeatedly. It's fine. And it's just nice because when you are tongue twisted and scared and you don't know what to do, you can just pull this out. Now, ideally, you get to the place where you're in flow and in the moment, you're just saying something honest and random to the situation. Be like, do you guys know where the bathroom is or whatever like you need to say in order to start a conversation? But those are some of the tips. Where else I can give you tips for various parts of the dating journey if they're useful. Where do you think they might be most valuable?
Can we pause? Because I think one of the scariest things for people is getting rejected. How do you deal with that fear and overcome it? Because if people weren't afraid of rejection,
like if you walk up to Andrea and she just ruins your life.
Yeah, yeah, and she's like, no. And
she's like, no, that line sucks. So there's a couple mindsets about it. The first one is that it is impossible in that situation for Andrea to have actually rejected the essence of who this guy was. She did not know anything about him. Maybe she didn't like the way that he looked. Maybe she didn't like the fact that he stumbled over his words. Maybe she was in a bad mood that day or she has a different type. It doesn't matter. It's impossible for someone to actually reject you in that way. That's important. And that means that, okay, I can actually just work on being a bit more grounded, confident, clear in my communication. I'll find that somebody that rejected me, if I just show up a little bit differently next time, doesn't reject me the next time, which means they're not rejecting me. They're rejecting a presentational aspect of me. So that's like helpful to making it not sting so close to the center. There's two more mindsets to give. The second is, it's kind of like, how should I deal? Like I want to play basketball, but how should I deal with the feeling that I'm going to get blocked sometimes and other times I'm going to miss the net? And it's like, well, one answer is just never play. And the other answer is that is a part of the game. Like you are going, I have, guys, this is the Michael Jordan. You miss all the shots that you do not take, right? So that guy, wherever he is right now, I promise you is not sweating the fact that however many months ago he spoke to you and it didn't go well. Like he's living his life. It's okay. It is very possible, and I don't know how he did it, that he did find some other woman that he was attracted to that did become a relationship, right? You only need it to hit once. You can miss all of the other shots. It can not work out for any reason, and you still come out a winner. So it's important. The mindset is play to win. Don't play not to lose. Like a lot of people are out there trying to keep their losses, their rejections at 0 instead of their amazing relationships at 1. It's like, try to win. Try to get the awesome relationship. Speak to the people that you're attracted to, whether you're a guy or a girl, no matter who you're attracted to. And then the third is, this is the more advanced one, is no one that is right for you is going to reject you. Like at the end of the day, I do have this belief that even when things are hard and even when it seems like you're in the shit and nobody likes you, is like you actually can't miss the people that are meant to come into your life. And that one can be tough when you feel like you're really alone and times are hard. Develop the skills for sure, work on doing this more often. But when I look back at the ones that hurt, like, oh my God, I liked her so much. She was supposed to like me and it didn't work out. I was like, no, man, thank God some of those relationships didn't work out well, because it created the space for the ones that actually, where I was able to like be myself, say the thing, and they did want to spend time with me. I know that I spent a lot of time being like, man, if I only had more access to the cool clubs, or I only could invite her on a boat or to Yacht Week or something like that, she definitely would have said yes. And getting the no is actually it's a gift. Because the people that say yes to those sorts of things want people that can offer them that sort of thing. And that's not me.
And what about tips for this stage, but online? Because a lot of people are reaching out online nowadays, so it's kind of a different ballgame there.
Yeah, this is one where I'm kind of past my pay grade with this one. I'm a little bit old for the online dating. And by the time that I got into it, I had the unfair advantage of being sort of established. And I like go to my Instagram. There's, several tens of thousands of followers, which helps with women. I had the blue check before the blue check was purchasable.
Yeah.
That made it easier. Like, so I don't have firsthand experience with the online dating. I'll just be frank. Online dating takes everything in dating and makes it 10 times more shallow. That is what it does. And so if you are someone who can take excellent photos or is naturally beautiful or has, behind the scenes DJ stuff, like you're going to succeed at a higher level in online dating, and bully for you. That's wonderful. I encourage you to do it. There's still wonderful people out there that you can come into contact with. It's tough if you're not those things. So what I would say is, as much as I'd like to tell you, it's like about messaging and this, it's about the quality of your photos. Like 80 to 90% of it is if you can take good photos. So if you're a guy, it's like go to the gym, take the photo where your bicep is pressed a little bit against your side, but it looks like it's not meant to be. like take excellent photos. And I have had friends that are not traditionally attractive get a professional photographer and just, some guy with a DSLR to like go around and do a photo shoot with a couple shirt changes, and their online dating did much, much better. And then all of a sudden it was like,
guys don't know how to take photos.
Guys don't know how to take photos. And that's a fair point, is to stand above so many of the guys on online dating, because I guess I don't get to see this, but I have on occasion. You're right. If you can take mediocre photos or pay for someone to take mediocre photos, but like not mediocre, better than mediocre, you can dramatically improve things. But I don't want to tell you that the answer is to like get in there and message differently, because the gating issue is your photos.
Also, one tip I would add to this, again, not my area of expertise, but if you are taking Charlie's advice, take photos of you maybe naturally doing
with a fish,
things.
Right?
Yeah, not the fish. Do it well if they're really passionate about fishing. Yes, like take photos. For example, like if you really like music, rather than a photographer like posing, have a friend take a candid photo of you playing the guitar. I think showing you have interest is much better.
I have that photo.
Really?
Oh yeah, 100%.
But was it staged?
The fish photos?
The guitar photo.
Good. Yeah.
No, it sort of. I mean, like I'm not on stage or anything. It's my friend taking a photo of me in my bedroom.
Great.
Yeah,
I think those type of photos do better than like guys purposely posing, because then it kind of looks like you're taking yourself too seriously for a dating app.
Well
so it's
said.
a fine art in photography. So get good at photography and make it candid.
That's a
Welcome
great
to the
point.
life
That
of an
actually also
influencer.
helps with the conversation too.
Yeah.
Because the more, let's say
People
that she
see
is
you have
attracted to
in
your
common.
photos. You share your values, the things that you do, that you love to do, that you're on this hike, that you have this guitar, that you have this adorable niece or nephew, whatever the things that actually fill your life up. Now you've got something to like talk about, reference, etc. Oh, you should come to one of the shows, or do you like this band? Yeah.
Feels less shallow because everything is so saturated these days. Everyone has sexy photos. So that I think will set them apart more.
Yeah.
I really enjoy hearing the way you give responses. You're such a good speaker. Did this come naturally to you, or did you have to train it?
Well, thank you, but zero. No.
Really?
No. Yeah.
Like the best thing I've been able to do when I really need to speak and I'm nervous is I write it down and I rehearse all of it. But how do you get so good off the cuff?
So there's two pieces of this. There is the analytical piece. So the part of me that goes, there's two pieces. That's up here. That's the part that is really supported by writing things down in advance. And I think there's a lot of value to doing that, to structuring your thoughts and realizing, oh, there's 3 main points that I have to make here. And these can sort of be bucketed and the story goes over here. Where you don't want to go too far is then just reciting the lines, right? So I had a lot of training of making the videos that I would do. I didn't have an editor. And so I would write down what I wanted to say, but I didn't have an editor. So I didn't do it line by line. I needed it to be one take. So I had to find a way to memorize it such that I could speak for 15 minutes without interruption. And that was basically...
Well, you didn't memorize 15 minutes?
I didn't memorize 15 minutes.
Oh,
what I
okay.
knew is I have 5 main points and a couple of stories that I want to tell. And so I practiced and got good in front of camera at speaking and just knowing, okay, here's the next point. Here's the next point. And so what I would remember, the only things I would remember are the first line that I had to say in the video, the 5 points, and then the closing line. And the value of the closing line is otherwise you just sort of ramble and you don't know what to say. It was like, okay, guys, that's it for today. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one, whatever it was. That was a piece of it. The second thing that I'm getting better at lately is answering. We all know the answer to every question that's asked of us if we can speak from our heart, from our chest. And where we get lost is if I try to give you an answer, then it isn't true. And so you're asking me like, how did you get good at that? It's what is it in my heart? My heart knows. My heart just knows, like the center of you. And this really is something that you can put your attention into your center line of your spine. If I were to ask you a question, we can play with it. Let's do one if you don't mind. I want to see how you answer. What has been the biggest transformation for you lately? And instead of going to your head, I see your eyes, like see if you can put your attention here.
Learning how to surrender and give up control of things I can't control. I did go into my brain first.
Well, see if you can go here.
And go deeper into that?
Yeah, just see if you can speak from this heart place.
This is something I worked a lot with my sister, actually. I realized that I am a bit of a control freak where I tend to overanalyze everything in all of these situations and think that I can control things that I can't, whether someone likes me, whether a deal goes through, whether the views are there. And I had to do a big shift when I'm stressing about something to actually ask myself, is this in my control? And if it's not, learning to tuck that away and not worry about it.
Yeah, that was totally cohesive. You gave examples, coherent. And I think the more that you can learn to hook these two things up, which comes from meditation and breath work and all the stuff that we described earlier, it makes speaking so much more fluid and easy.
So maybe then it's hard to talk cohesively when you and your heart are not sure yet.
Yes, or when you are afraid that touching your heart will make you say something vulnerable that isn't appropriate to the situation.
Yeah,
and
when you have to filter it.
Yes, so that's what happens is we get filtered. So if I go to my heart, oh shit, maybe I don't know the answer. What, oh, that's kind of a tough question, or I need a second to think about that. Like, we're so afraid to say the honest truth. I don't know. That reminds me, and to take those 3 seconds to let the heart catch up to speed, that we just go, oh, I know the answer to that. And then we're just like chasing a sentence that we're constructing as it falls off of a cliff. I don't know if you guys have had that experience. I imagine that is that resonating?
Oh, for sure.
Yes, where you're just like grasping for the next word in the sentence because you haven't given yourself enough time to land.
And then as I'm grasping, I panic because I'm like, oh no, I don't know the word. And then I freeze because I realize I don't know where I'm going. Yeah. Andrea, has that happened for you?
Yeah, I mean, doing this podcast,
yeah.
I looked at our very first episodes. And of course, I've also grown. I read, my vocabulary's maybe improved. It's a mix of things. But I think the first novice mistake that anyone in podcast does is answering when you haven't thought it out. So that's why I use filler words and then you start talking and then you realize you don't want to go that direction. Then you have to restart. And I'm also, it's hard really because a lot of times maybe I have practiced and I have thought ahead of time and then I still don't exactly know where the next thing I want to take it, which is nice. I like having us too because sometimes I can think, well, she talks and then it's also nice having space to breathe. Because otherwise it'd be really stressful. But watching back episodes is super helpful.
So great point that you just made. Like everyone needs space. And I've done podcasts with co-hosts and it's like, oh, thank God I was about to go off of the edge there.
Yeah.
And now I can find myself. If you can begin, I'm learning still to do this, to take 5-10 seconds to collect yourself and not we are so uncomfortable with silence, so that if two people are in a conversation, you ask me a question that stumps me, I could be so uncomfortable with silence that I can't land in my heart. And so we use multi-person conversations to sort of build the space into the structure of the conversation. But a real skill is to be able to move slow enough for yourself to speak honestly. And the problem is people that are very smart get good at speaking from this like inventor in their head that is like, and I've gotten deep into conversations where it's like, why did you say that? None of that is true. Like, yeah, you know, things have been like really different. Like the people came to the house, like none of that happened. I'm just in a fantasy world. So yeah, time, space, and the self-love to pause and let there be silence is hugely powerful.
Yeah, sometimes the silence is uncomfortable. I remember when I first started learning this lesson, it was because a friend kind of pointed it out. Well, now we're not really friends, but but I don't know, they're a person in my life. And I used to be very ADHD and I would hate the silence. It'd make me so uncomfortable. And when you'd hang out with someone, and let's say like you went to lunch, now you're walking to the car, you don't really have things to talk about. And I'd be like, oh, like walk by the store, like, oh, that's a nice store, you know? And they'd be like, you know, you don't always have to fill the silence. They didn't say it the nicest way, but honestly, it was feedback that I took to heart that I never forgot. And even now with people I'm really close with, sometimes I still feel that panic when I'm in silence. I'm like, this is still a little awkward, but it's so much better. But it takes time, and I think that was my hardest thing to get over.
I still struggle with that too, and it's at the end of a meeting, and you know you're waiting for the person's Uber.
Yeah,
you're just conversations, and I feel like I guess I should make conversation.
Some small talk.
Yeah,
because you can't just sit in silence for 4 minutes while this Uber comes. So what do you do?
What do you do?
And we'll remember this when you're leaving to your car
We're
later.
gonna practice
waiting awkwardly after we've talked about everything. Just kidding.
I think when I land in my heart, you laugh at it. You go, I don't know what to say. There is an honest truth that can be spoken in almost every moment, which is, for instance, you might be like, I hate this part of interactions where like we're done the podcast and I don't know what to say and I feel so awkward. And you're going to get resonance from someone when it's spoken from truth. I've told this story too many times on podcasts, but briefly, I've worked with a lot of clients, and I remember working with one woman who said, you know, I'm trying to work on, I freeze, I don't know what to say. And I'm speaking with my personal trainer, and he's so gregarious and he does all the work in the conversation. I still can't make it happen. And so he asked me a question that was like, tell me about yourself. And I just like froze. I didn't know what to do. And so I said, well, what was going on in your head? She was like, I don't know. That's a big question. I have no idea where to begin. And so I was like, what if you just said what was alive inside of you? And so she went back and she had another situation where somebody said something similar. And she said, yeah, this is such a big question. I don't know what to do. And they said, oh, well, like they helped her along. So if you're in the situation where somebody's in the car and you don't know what to say and what's going on in your head is, man, these situations are awkward. If you can lovingly like accept that feeling and be like, oh man, aren't these situations awkward where we have no idea what to say to each other? You can break the ice in that way, in a way that makes it more interesting and comfortable. We'll test it after. We'll see if it...
I'm going to use that line exactly.
I think that works with people who maybe you've hung out with a couple times. For people you know really well, like let's say I'm in the car with my sister, but I guess at that point we're so comfortable we don't mind silence. But let's say it's like a best friend, you know,
all of your best friends would be fine with you saying
exactly. So the silence isn't really.
I think it's harder when you don't know each other.
When you don't know each other.
Because it's easy to sit in silence when you do. I agree.
Yeah. So okay, then this is okay. So let's say that's not the line. There is a truth where you're sitting with someone and maybe there's something that you want to know about them that you haven't asked yet. I think another thing that we're afraid to do is like leap forward in relational bonding sometimes. And that's why, I don't know if you guys have been at events, it can sometimes be weird, but where somebody like brings cue cards and like gets people to say the deep thing of what's going on in their life. So you could be sitting there and be like, so did you see the Dodgers game or did you this? It's like, oh God, that sucks. But hey, you mentioned earlier this thing I wanted to ask you, like what, have you in your spiritual journey like felt like you encountered God? Like I know that could come out of left field if we're waiting for the Uber, but if there's some real question that is alive in me that I didn't ask, there's an opportunity for that. And I think people are sometimes afraid to like jump forward in connection and conversation and ask the thing that is a little bit scary, a little bit vulnerable, but often people are, thank God he didn't ask me about the Dodgers. Thank God he didn't say something superficial. Like I'll take this chance to actually connect. And I do have these questions. Like if we were sitting, I'd be so curious to hear more about both of your spiritual journeys.
Small talk is something I struggle with a lot. And Dre and I have talked about it where we really want to get into the deep stuff. And obviously, you know, you can't walk up to somebody in a party and be like, what was the craziest spiritual experience you've had in your life? It's probably not the opener. Do you have tips on how you can break through the small talk and get into deep things, especially in crowds where maybe it's not the people you would usually hang out with?
I will say, and you're totally right. And I have a friend who impresses me. He is very confident and comfortable with himself. And so he'll just be like, okay, let's play a game. I got a question for everybody. This is a big one. Like, when was the last time that you guys felt the presence of God? And like, he'll bring that in like in a way that people are like, ooh, that's a good question type of a thing. And he's got this presence and comfort. And so he is able to make that leap. But let's say that that's a lot for you. What you want to do, I see most often, is take the common topics of conversation that you feel so bored of all the time. So people will often ask, what do you do? Where are you from? What have you been up to lately? And you want to find ways to make sure that you consistently answer those questions with hooks for the things that you care most about. If you'd ask me, what have I been up to lately? And I was like, oh, you know, just hanging out, like doing some work, playing some games, you know, maybe you ask me about video games, but maybe we don't connect there. But if I instead say, well, I purchased the business, I've had a spiritual awakening, you know, and I give you two other things, the chances that we meet on something that I want to talk about, like I have no idea that you guys are going through the same thing. And if you hadn't done research on me, there would be potentially no connection there. But if you bring your values into those normal questions, there's a chance that you jump from how are you doing immediately to like, tell me about your ayahuasca experience, right? And you can go deep really fast. So the answer in short to small talk is take it one of two ways. You want to take it into silliness and playfulness, which is like non-literal answers. You're like, I don't know, man, taking over the world, like whatever. And then values would be the other side of things, that you're incorporating little hooks. I think of it like Velcro. Ways where people can, if they're interested in spirituality, they can ask more, but you're not throwing it all at them. You're not like, I've been on a spiritual journey. I did ayahuasca many years ago. My girlfriend and I are moving in together. It's just one little hook so they can choose what they're interested in.
So the answer seems like being more specific.
Yes. Be more. So for instance, let's back into it. I imagine you get bored of small talk. You like have people come up to you. It could feel awkward.
That's why I stopped going to parties, because the music's too loud to have good conversations. Unless it's really good music, then I dance. Yeah.
What are the things that you don't have enough people in your life, or maybe you do, that you wish you could speak more about with people that were like-minded?
I have a very good support circle of friends. So all my personal needs are always there. But music and art is the thing I really love. And there's a specific hustle of grinding on Ableton and building techno that I can only really connect with other techno artists, and everyone who does that is all around the world. So I kind of keep in touch with my online friends, but it's something that I wish I had more of a music community, specifically up face to face.
Great. So one is like music creation, production. Okay, we'll try to get two more. Give another two things.
More.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could be shadow work. Could be anything that.
Another thing that I wish I could connect with people more on.
Yeah, that you would like to, rather than the weather or local sports team.
Let me think, because right now I feel it used to always be personal reflection and meeting people with more aligned goals like fitness, family. But honestly, that's problems kind of fixed in my life, so I don't feel like that need anymore. And that was always the big thing. So I haven't thought of anything outside of that one because they were so strong. You have any, Alex?
No, I'm comfortable with your silence. Yeah. Continue.
I was going to give you. It's okay to think, so I'll give you some more. So it could be something that you feel a need for. It could be something that really interests you also in other people. Like you would like be excited to hear them talk about their story. So I don't know if it seemed like you cared about shadow work.
Yeah, I mean, in general, whenever I do get to know someone, I always want to know whether they are also on a journey of improving themselves, and if there's something that they're working on or they're searching through. So that's always honestly the top one thing that I want to talk to people close to me about.
So we'll take these two. So you've got this personal development / shadow work, self-improvement journey. You've got music, Ableton, techno, production. If I ask you, where are you from or what are you doing out in LA? The best answer that you come up with is going to allude to both of these things, right? So you'd be like, I originally came out here. I'm someone who's like really into personal development. And when I started, it was all around fitness and Twitch. But lately it's kind of taken a spiritual bent. But the big thing that I'm focused on these days is I'm really into music production. And I love, for instance, this person. So people that you want to connect with will have 2 immediate shots at just like, oh my God, me too, right? And if you do that with 2 or 3 things early in conversation, you're going to increase the hit rate of connecting with people so much more.
Wait, but you'd open rip with that?
I know that's a lot of information.
I don't know if you can walk up to.
So you're not opening. So they're asking you, like, for instance,
they're asking you, how are you doing?
They're asking you, like, why did you move to LA? They're asking you, like, where.
Oh, that makes sense. If you're going to somewhere.
Like, hey, what's up, dude? No. This is, and if I had approached them, this comes when they open to you.
No, that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. What do you do? Where are you from? What have you been up to lately? What are you working on? You want to make sure that your answer isn't, I've been busy. Like, that's going to kill conversation or keep it in small talk.
It's funny because I heard you give this tip when I was studying for this episode. And then I went to my yoga class and I had a small interaction where I see a mutual who I know from a friend. And after yoga, it's always like, oh, what are you up to? And I usually say, just working. Because I think back and I'm just like blurred because I'm like, we work every week. And then instead of saying that, I'm like, oh, we've been pivoting into things we really care about because that's been our goal for this year. So been working on the podcast with my sister and music. I'm really happy now because my goal was kind of to project like changing our goals and personal goals. And then she reacted to that really positively. So I even implemented another thing, like naturally without thinking, just from hearing your tip on the podcast. And it made those little small interactions way more enjoyable too. And like I felt more like I got to know her rather than, oh, we're working. How about you? We're working.
Yeah. Look, you can be like, oh, wow, we've lived parallel paths in our lives based on the superficial things that I know about you. And so it's important to get them in there early, totally hear and respect the point of you don't just like, hey, what's up? I'm Charlie. I did ayahuasca last year.
Yeah.
But the earlier so if somebody asks me what I've been doing, I did a psychedelic documentary a few months ago. Like, these are the types of things that I want to work into rather than answering, oh, yesterday I just kind of hung around the house and played with the dog. And, it's just been pretty chill lately. That gives zero potential for that person to connect with me over my niche interests, which is really where I want to be.
I actually want to get into the psychedelic journey, but I have one question that I really need your advice with. Andrea talked about filler words. You talked about it and how silence is good. One of the filler words I struggle with the most is like, and there's an epidemic of it.
There's an epidemic
with people our age. Coming into this podcast, I was prepping myself. Don't say the word like, don't do it. I even considered putting an elastic band to like zap myself when I do it. Do you have any tips? Because like isn't exactly while you're thinking, it connects thoughts together.
Yeah.
How do I stop saying like so often?
Great question. So I think for all things verbal fluency, one of the real losses that we have is everyone had this moment in their life where they were 3 or 5 or 7 and they were talking to themselves and somebody came in here and said, why are you talking to yourself? But if you look at a child, they're constantly babbling. They're practicing speech. But we all, even if we're alone, often live predominantly silently. And if we catch ourselves talking to ourselves, sometimes we're like, oh, that's kind of weird. It's not weird. It's very, very normal to verbalize your own thoughts. Like this, I just said, like, this is a little tiny dojo where you're only able to practice so much and it's not somatically connected. So I can have a perfect conversation up here and then the connection with my tongue and my mouth is just busted. So on the way over, I'm talking to you guys, I'm talking to friends, I'm doing videos, I'm just verbalizing my experience. So if you ever have long car rides and you're listening to podcasts, talk back. People associate this with being crazy. I think it's associated with really powerful verbal fluency. Mm-hmm. And so if you do that, you can also, unlike a normal conversation where you're paying attention to me, how am I doing? Or is this good for the audience? When you're alone in your car, you can just listen for the times that you say like. And what you begin to do is you start to get these modes of communicating, these grooves that you can step into. I know that when I'm communicating with friends, I swear so much more. I use a lot of crutch words like don't know. You put this thing in front of me, it's a very, very different experience because I have this dropped in mode. And if there's a white wall and I have a black shirt, I'm charisma on command. I'm ready to go. That context really, really gets me dropped into a particular way of communicating.
So practicing for the context where you want to remove that filler word.
Exactly. And also just think about it. If you are not able to talk when you are alone and you are only able to quote unquote practice when your attention is basically elsewhere, you're not going to remove it. It's just going to stay in your language. But if you take car rides, and not to just remove the word like, but to enjoy the sound of your own voice, to enjoy the unloading of your own thoughts, you can use it as emotional catharsis and purging. I really think people would benefit if they spoke out loud to themselves more often.
Yeah, it's just a little uncomfortable at first.
Because we've all been shamed for it. 3-year-olds are not uncomfortable speaking to themselves. Someone has to tell them that's weird. They have to do it in class. They have to do the weird thing, but it's very normal to vocalize to yourself. It's actually really sad in our culture that there's a bunch of normal things that we've made weird, like crying, like vocalizing, like singing, like dancing, like moving freely. We've all got these cages where we're not allowed to use our own resources fully. And then we have these problems because we're not allowed to use all of our own resources, and we try to fix them. Like, what can I do? Is just use more of what is available if you let go of the shame, basically.
I got nothing to add. I always talk to myself. Sometimes Alex hears me and she's like, you remind me of Squeak or Parrot. You're always yapping to yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure someone told you that, right?
But in a funny, loving
Oh,
way.
I talk to myself all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I accidentally do it publicly.
Yes.
Because I go on walks where I'm reflecting.
I'm the same way.
And I'm talking and I'm with my hands. And then I notice when I get out of my head that somebody's looking at me like, oh, yeah, that probably looked pretty weird. But it helps. So I do it.
I have a suspicion that sub-vocalizing, verbalizing out loud to yourself is associated with more creativity, because it's definitely connected to more creativity in my life. When I'm doing it, I'm way more creative. When I'm not, I'm way more restrained and limited.
Yeah. And what I've noticed, I don't have to be talking at a regular pace. I'm kind of whispering to myself, which looks a little weird.
So that's good for speed thinking, because what you're doing is you're putting the thoughts together in the fastest way. If you want to cut out like, you need to speak actually out loud, like you're having a conversation in full volume. They're different practices.
That's true.
You're practicing your thinking. Yeah.
I need to
talk,
get it out of my vocabulary. So I will
enjoy the car ride home.
Yeah, Andrea.
This is why I launched, I think it's my 3rd YouTube channel. It's we made the podcast, and then I have my super personal vlog channel where I podcast alone. And I made it purely as a passion project because there are so many things around creativity, around self-work that I really enjoyed talking about. And I made the channel purely because by me practicing talking about it with people, I actually feel like improves my scale of living, because then I'm more attentive to the things that I want to preach to about other people. And the process of figuring out how to document and share it with other people makes me enjoy it and be more aware of and not forget these goals for myself. And, it might not be the most active because I'm not forcing myself to do weekly uploads because it's not a chore. It's purely my passion project. But that was the whole reason I did this channel. And I do feel like when I prepare these episodes, I think deeper about the topics that I wanted to.
Yeah. So there's the talking out loud, and then there's the putting a camera on yourself, which can feel even more awkward. But the secondary benefits, as you guys know, of learning to speak into a camera, to pull together your thoughts without the encouragement of an audience, there are so many. You become a better thinker. You become a better speaker. You might have an entire career, as you guys have built, out of being comfortable communicating on the camera. So that is actually something that I recommend to people, is set up your iPhone, turn it on, and then you can listen back for the likes, the the uhs, the times where you don't enjoy listening to you. Because a lot of people are, again, so ashamed of hearing their own voice on camera or seeing how they look on camera that they'll never create the opportunity to get the feedback that would actually transform the way that they talk. So I know that watching my own videos after they were done was so transformative for realizing, oh man, I'm doing this like weird thing with my hands. I don't need to do that anymore.
It is really uncomfortable to watch yourself, and I used to not be able to do it. I hated watching myself and listening to my own voice, but it was like a muscle that I ended up training, and now I can do it. I still don't like it, but it is really helpful.
Yeah. So think, not that this is what we want. Imagine someone who is never allowed to look at a mirror, but their goal is to become more beautiful. Right? They have no feedback mechanism, and okay, I need to go off what other people say or think. It's like, okay, you have something on they're trying to do their eyeshadow or whatever, or their makeup based on what they're hearing from other people. That is what it is like when you're unwilling to watch yourself on camera. You can never get that reflection of how you sound, what you look like, how you feel. And we've talked briefly about this, but I think one of the things that if people could unlock that would transform their lives is the ways in which they are constricted and self-loathing because of the shame that they feel. Because obviously there are people all over the world that are very happy to listen to both of you talk. But as we all know firsthand, it's really tough to look at yourself and listen to yourself, even if other people are approving of it.
Speaking of being on camera, I have one last thing I wanted to ask for your advice on. And this one, I'm almost convinced that there's no solution to, and maybe you've already given us the answer, but maybe it doesn't really apply to the content world. But the one scenario we've been in millions of times is we play chess games for strangers. We've asked every question around chess hundreds of times. Oh, how'd you get into chess? Oh, who's your favorite chess YouTuber? Oh, Hans or Magnus. And it would get to the point where sometimes playing the chess games and doing this forced small talk conversation would get so exhausting. And, it really, really depends on the personality. Some people have insane personalities, will share everything. Sometimes they're just college students or tech bros or business people who just really like chess. I don't know if you have any advice for this because it's so specific to us. And it also kind of has to be catered for entertainment.
Sure, yeah.
But let's say you're in our shoes. You are doing 6 hours of chess matches. You're playing 20 people today.
Yeah.
What type of questions do you think you could ask your opponents to make it more interesting?
So tell me, what is your goal for this? What do you want to have happen?
That the hard thing here is because we're always battling between you have to have some narrative one-liner that you can use for the clickbait thumbnail title, and that's not authentic. And we've also done every single clickbait one-liner. So it's like, I can't keep going back to old lines that did well. I need to come up with new things on the spot. And sometimes I'll try to come up, for example, we like it when they trash talk. So I'll always ask them, do you think I'm overrated or underrated, to kind of provoke them? Like, do you think I'm good or bad chess player? So also, I guess the intentions aren't really pure. I would like to get to know that person as well, but I want to do it in a fun, entertaining, playful way.
Yeah. So you're struggling with what so many creators struggle with, which is I'm creating a veneer of authenticity to chase a title, right?
Yeah.
And it sucks. I hate doing it. I don't have the answer. I can tell you what I've experienced. I hate chasing titles. It hurts so bad. And even if it succeeds, there's a part of me that dies when I do that.
Exactly.
How to get any girl to like you is just like,
exactly.
like,
I
I'm just
know.
going to smash my head into a wall eventually. So I'm not saying this is the answer. My answer is I would rather have the results that come from authenticity and let those chips fall where they may. Surrender. Right? Okay, if I show up more as me, and let me bring more of me, let me bring more of my enthusiasm, let me bring more of my frustration, let me bring more of my curiosity. But what the possibility that comes there is, and you guys had this at the beginning of your careers, you were not thinking about titles at the beginning of your career. Nobody was like, hey girls, no, it would be great if you guys did chess on this new site Twitch. Like, that is not somebody who's thinking of how to succeed. That is somebody who is expressing for other people what they care about. And that, almost to a person, every creator knows that zone in their career where they were just doing the thing and they defined a genre doing it. They came up with a title structure that emerged organically, and then they become the pigeon in the Skinner box, just pressing the button like, oh, we need them to trash talk because that video did well. I suspect that for you, there's so many more structures available, but you have to, like the monkey bars, like let go of the old way of doing things and trust that if you show up increasingly authentically, that a new way will emerge. And in between, views are going to suffer.
It's very much what we have been doing.
Like,
and I think you're totally right. And now, we'll do a couple hours and maybe we only don't post that much, but I don't try to force things as much, try to let them come naturally. And then you also experiment with other things. We'll see how it goes for us.
Yeah, it's hard. And it's not that I don't love chess still. It's just turning chess into content. When you've been racking your brain for 5 years, I feel like I've squeezed all the juice that is out left. And even coming up with new ideas feels like a chore that I deeply don't enjoy anymore. And that's what makes it hard. And of course, like if I'm playing Blitz against one of my friends who's the same level as me and like we're friends and we trash talk each other for fun, I love doing that. But when it's like, now we have to do it formulaic. What is the thumbnail and the title? What is the hook for retention? Where are we going to film this? And it just takes the joy out of it. And I realized a lot of burnout isn't from working too much, but it's on working on things I don't enjoy for too long.
This is true. this is like really, really deep stuff for a lot of people here. Burnout in relationships, burnout in your career, burnout wherever, is when you found a mode that used to work for you. You overly structured it and made it super rigid in order to get the outcome of the creative thing that used to emerge naturally. So you guys want the views, you want the money, you want the business continuation or whatever. If I think what I'm exploring, and there's costs to this, but is what would I love? What would thrill me? What's the piece of thing that I would just love to do? Like if I put the camera down and I would still be happy that I did this thing with 6 hours of my time, what would that look like? And can we just film that? And so I find that you do want, I believe, a union of like this business mindedness and this creative artistry that's really important. When the business mind encroaches so deeply and has for years, you need this period of just like, okay, get it completely off me. No cameras, or pretend that there's no cameras. And it doesn't, like, the freedom and flexibility to explore and experiment and do something wacky. This podcast sounds like it is in that direction for you guys. That's really important. And I can tell you now I'm 38, I've been around for 13 years. Even if you guys come up with the best one-liners, that format will die. And the part of you that feels it dying inside of you is actually the part of you that's ahead of the curve. Because you could execute it perfectly and people are going to get tired of it in 6 months. The fact that you're tired of it tells you where your audience is going to be later. And it actually, if you look at bands like the Beatles, they're able to be great over the course of their career because they weren't trying to play the song from the last album. They were one step ahead. And yes, some people were like, no, don't do the new thing. But it's like, that's what an artist does, is they stay ahead of the curve of what the audience is screaming for. And they give them the next thing. And the cost of that is a bunch of weird songs like I Am the Walrus, you know, like there's weirdness that comes out of that process. There's duds, things that die, stuff that gets buried. But yeah, I'm certain that both of you, given like flexibility into your creative flow, can make something that you really are passionate about, that you love, that people eat up. And yes, there might be this period of time where like there's a dip where it's just not as easy as the old
Buy the
content.
dip.
Yeah. Buy the dip for sure. Yeah. Invest in the dip. Invest in Charisma on Command. We're dipping right now. It's in a total.
And how are you dealing with that?
Total panic and ego death, right? I used to get X amount of views and now I don't get X amount of views. I used to love making the videos and now they're torture to pull out of myself. I exaggerate. Oh, it's so good to die to that stuff. It's so good to have the thing that you don't want to do. Like I'm actually at the point where it doesn't work anymore. So it's great. It's like, oh, I can't even go back if I wanted to. I can't make the videos in the same way that I used to. The audience is not interested in the same way they used to be. Everyone is basically agreeing it's time for you to move on.
So what's next for you?
A lot of what we spoke about today. I think if I had to give some of the buzzwords, I think there's a lot around masculinity that is just, you guys know the conversations that are being had. It's like, well, we're going to go the Andrew Tate way, or are we going to go the all men are toxic way?
We need a new masculine figure.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that I'm the only one, but I hope that for some people that my model can be supportive and helpful. And I would like to take the people that are like, oh, I'm into that maybe I learned from you back in the Charisma on Command, here's what to say to a girl on the street days, and start doing men's groups and start doing more community building things offline. So that would be one very like important buzzword. The second one would be your psychedelics. Don't tell anybody, but that's a very important piece. And then I think the audience facing piece of that would be emotional development and exploration. So like what comes after your guys' phase of I hit the success. I'm where I need to be on that pyramid. I've checked all of these boxes. Something is missing. I really want to help people move from superficial and even incredible business, life success, relationship success, but the something is missing. Like I want to meet people there because I think what comes after that, as you've said, is the biggest gift that people have to give. I think for a lot of people's lives, they give these incredible gifts in the first arc of their career. But the real thing, the real juice is when they feel safe enough to like, okay, I've actually made it. Now what comes out of me is just beautiful and honest and like deeply helpful. So I want to do that and I want to help people do that.
We need to talk about psychedelics.
Okay.
Tell us, why is this your mission?
Okay. I was a tough cookie and I was not going to get cracked any other way. I should say, I've mentioned this a number of times. This is not for everybody. I would not encourage everybody to get into this, but the pattern that I had was like stable, no history of psychosis in my family. All of these sorts of boxes were checked. I made it to 30 and never done any of this stuff. Concretely, I mean, I spoke about it, but there's a history of abuse in my past. There is ways in which I abandoned myself after those sorts of experiences that just persisted and would have become the soup in which I lived forever. There was not even a question in me of like, do I need to look at these things? The answer was obviously no. These are not problems. And so the sledgehammer in some cases of these psychedelic experiences, which goes, buddy, you're not walking away from this one. You're not going to walk past and pretend that this didn't leave deep impacts that need to be explored and worked through and healed. Thank God for that, because otherwise I think I could have been a highly functioning person disconnected from my own heart and my own soul. And so that's why, like, they're just incredibly powerful, disruptive, you can call them technologies, experiences, rituals. And so I want to offer that to other people because it's so transformed my life in ways that I don't think I could have found in another modality.
And what do you think people misunderstand about psychedelics?
I think that we have a relationship with all substances that are like, oh, that substance is addictive. Oh, that substance is toxic. Oh, that substance, caffeine is a drug, or caffeine isn't a drug. And chocolate or cacao, we have these classifications, and we think that the essence of a thing lies in the thing and not in our relationship with the thing. So I think that, is alcohol good or bad is very much a relational question for each person. Are mushrooms good or bad? That's another relational question. And I think that extends to even the big ones, ayahuasca, etc. Is this good or bad? It's how are you going to relate to it? And are you in a sturdy and stable enough place to relate to this in a healthy way? Then it can be very valuable. But I think what we do instead is we have these class 1 drugs where we just go, these are bad. These are too dangerous to anything. And the real question is, for whom might these be incredibly valuable, and for whom should these not be played with and experimented with?
And what about psychedelics helps you move deeper in this connection with yourself that other things don't do?
So I had incredibly sophisticated repression powers, like really, really good. Was in conversation, could outrun a therapist.
Wow.
Yeah,
so they didn't come up in therapy dealing with these issues that came up in the psychedelic.
I could like
journey?
shake them off. They'd be like, "That sounds like it was a thing." I was like, "Yeah, like I could." Well, what if I was like too jeffed at getting away, and it felt authentic at the time. I was like, "Yeah, this really isn't bothering me. I don't know what to say. Like, we can keep poking around in here if you want. There's nothing to see." So I had like sophisticated systems, and I think a lot of people do. The psychedelics break those down, and they dissolve the walls of those things. They put you into the fire of some challenging experiences on occasion. And I also think that they unlock, if you are lucky, patient, have a skilled facilitator, you do the work around it. They awaken your inner knowledge in a very, very powerful way. It's not required to awaken like this inner knowing, but it's a common side effect, or a common, I don't even know if side effect, it's the gift of these sorts of experiences. So I do want to be careful whenever speaking to a large audience. Like, I don't want to just persuade random person who has never done this and doesn't have a safe place to go to local dude and buy something and take it in his house. That's not how I did it. I did it with trained facilitators over many years, with support groups, no history of psychosis in my family, plenty of support in my system around that. But when well supported, that's what I want to make. Thank you for asking. You're helping me clarify. When well supported, they are probably some of the most powerful transformational tools that I've ever experienced. When not well supported, they're some of the most dangerous. Fire is a fair comparison. Can heat your feet, can heat your home, or it can burn it down, depending on how you treat it.
Very beautifully put. Thank you for sharing. And thank you so much for coming on our podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for the invitation.
A wonderful
forward
conversation.
to the rebirth of Charisma on Command.
Me too.
We're excited to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to Bose for
Masculinity.
the
Yeah, shout out Big Boss Bose for introducing us to Charlie.
Yeah.
Everyone, if you learned something, not only go follow Charisma on Command, but next time you see Bose's crime video, say, hey, you helped me improve my confidence and you don't even know.